Good evening, good evening, good evening. Let me welcome you to this evening's edition. Good evening, good evening. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Let me welcome you to this evening's edition of Mango Tree Dialogues, our Thursday edition. And as you know, we try to discuss matters that are of interest to the public. We're looking at matters in Jamaica and issues that are taking place in the Caribbean diaspora, with special reference to the United States. And then we look at some international issues that are taking place currently. So this evening, we want to look at a number of things. And just want to give you an idea of some of the subjects that we will be talking about. First, I'd want to say something about the cabinet picks by President-elect Trump. He has started to give us the contours of his cabinet and what he's hoping to achieve going into the next 4 years. And then I would like to say something about the resignation of the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, and also to zero in on the matter of the fall of Syria, the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. And that should be enough for us to chew on this evening. All right, so let me welcome you and hope that we'll have a very interesting evening as we talk about these issues. And of course, you know, if you like what you're saying, just give us the thumbs up and send the episode off to somebody else, a friend, so that they can be a part of it. I'm really grateful, you know, that you come onto the channel and that you're able to express your thoughts about things that are of importance in your life, and that you can challenge even any assumptions that I may make. And that is very important because I certainly do not have all the answers. Never pretended to. And I guess I'm a bit too old now to even think that I could pretend to. So, you know, be free to express yourselves, and you can get me through, of course, sending me an email, sted6655@aol.com. That's one medium. You can also get me on WhatsApp through 407-580-8664. And of course, you can make your live comments as you are listening, and I will respond to them. If I don't do it this evening, then certainly I will pick it up for the next broadcast. All right. So let's go. So President-elect Trump has selected a number of people that he wants to be in his cabinet, and not just in the cabinet, but in very important posts. There are a number of foreign posts that he has announced, you know, ambassadors to different places. Jared Kushner's father, for example, you know, getting appointed to be the ambassador to France, and also a number of others. And I don't want to detain us naming them at this point, but that is taking place perhaps even as I speak. But the most important picks that he has made so far with regard to those who are going to be sitting with him in the cabinet and making the decisions that are going to govern the lives of Americans over the next 4 years. I would say, in the main, I don't want to even use the word interesting, but people are certainly interested in the kind of names that have emerged. For example, Matt Gaetz. Because a lot of people were disturbed that he should have been, for the many reasons that he has demonstrated in his own life to date, a young man, and having all that kind of baggage as far as a lot of people are concerned, he was not fit and proper to be the Attorney General. And he has had to, set him aside, or at least he resigned, or resigned from the Congress, and decided that he would not allow his name to be put forward for Attorney General. But there are many others who have been, considered. And we have, for example, Tulsi Gabbard, who has been appointed, or at least nominated by Trump to be the new to be the director of the national intelligence, one of the most important jobs in terms of the whole intelligence gathering mechanisms of the country. And many people have doubts about her because she is seen to be a bit, for lack of a better word, too chummy with Putin, Vladimir Putin of Russia, and also of having some kind of relationship, social relationship, let me put it that way, with the now fallen leader of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. But it is not for only those reasons, but people are very doubtful as to whether she has what it takes to really do the work of such an important agency, in terms of the work that the agency has to do, not just domestically, but internationally, in protecting the homeland. And of course, another important one that is now doing the rounds, he's doing the rounds of the, meeting with senators to present himself as somebody who is acceptable. And I speak of no other than Pete Hegseth, formerly an anchor of Fox News, that has been very close to the Trump idea of MAGAism, and promotes conservative principles along certain lines that many people consider to be very injurious to the health of the society, of the country. But anyway, he is making the rounds with the senators, as I said, and one does not know exactly what will emerge. Because one thing about United States politicians in the era of MAGA, Making America Great Again, Trumpism, is that a lot of them have been cowed, certainly in the Republican Party. A lot of them have demonstrated that they're cowards. A lot of them have stated that they stand for certain principles, but when the heat takes them, or they're threatened, their political power in the state that they represent is threatened, they bow the knees, they get cowed because they don't want to be primaried, or they don't want any kind of adverse comment or adverse situation coming their way because they decided to stand on principle. And that is very sad, because when you see big men, and I say men because largely it has been men, who once took a certain decision or said a certain thing that people lauded to see them later on. And of course, I'm talking about Ted Cruz, for example, later on caving in and kissing the ring of the very one that, you know, brought a lot of shame. At least people who have a sense of shame and who saw that as a shameful behavior. Or, that he was able to bow himself, his knees, and then come running and kissing the ring. That happens too much in our politics. And if there has been a very sad aspect of the Trump era, it is the extent to which it has been revealed. Because, one could have thought that, this has been there in a latent way in the whole body politic over time. And you see it particularly in the Republican Party. I remember back in the day, I could have been about 10 years or so ago now, 10, 12 years ago. I don't know if people remember the Grover Norquist letter or pledge that had to be signed off on by Republican politicians that they would not raise taxes. And how many of them, because they feared being primaried, gathered up behind Norquist and signed. And when Bush lost the election to Barack Obama, one would have thought that the party would have taken some kind of evaluation of itself, a kind of self-analysis to see where they were. And in the way in which it bowed, for example, the senators right across the Republican spectrum bowed its knees to the Norquist pledge. One could see germinating a situation in which Trump later on a man like Trump later on could come and change things and fashion things. Not because he necessarily saw the weakness, because the weakness was already there. It was already stated, especially I'm using the Norquist pledge. And you can Google it. Google him and Google what he was about. A lot of information there. But you will see the beginning, you will begin to see an emergence of a kind of cowardice in the Republican body politic that came into full flowering under Trump. So by the time Trump came on the scene, and in his inimitable way, and I say inimitable because no one can outdo Trump in the way that he does things. You're gonna have to have a very strong stomach to be able to outdo Trump. So inimitable. You can't imitate him. That he has been able to bottle up all of that, what I would call cowardice, and to now realize that all of them keep, they're running for office and they have to pass through, Trump Tower. They can't come to New York and they don't come up to the Trump Tower to be endorsed or to get some money. And, I guess he got the idea that, well, if they're coming to me and wanting me to do, why not run yourself? Why not get out there? And of course he did, and he won the first time, and now it's history. He's gone back there a second time. Because I think largely riding on the cowardice that he saw. And even if he did not see it, that was already embedded in Republican politics and which now he was able to harness to promote a doctrine of MAGAism, more than a doctrine, a movement as it has become, that he has now been so entrenched. And so he's making the picks that he's making for his cabinet in tandem with that which he has always espoused. I'm not surprised at many of any of these picks. I would be surprised if he had done contrary and probably picked, good people that he could assist him in governance. The one good pick that I could say in terms of the cabinet is Marco Rubio. And it is because Marco Rubio himself has shown himself to be wimpish with regard to Trump in certain respects. But you have got to hand it to him. He has been on the Foreign Relations Committee, and he has a very good grasp of foreign affairs. And I think he'll make a useful, let me put it that way, Secretary of State. I hand him that. And he's the only one that I see that has emerged that has some gravamen to do things that I think, can benefit the country, in the long run. But the many others, I don't have time this evening to talk about individuals. But it is very distressing, the caliber that he's surrounding himself with. And it says to me one thing, that Trump is not really serious about serious governance. He's interested in people who can be absolutely loyal to him. He learned very well from the last time that you pick people who will push back at you and you run into problems. He can't get the agenda that he wants to pursue. So he picks people that he is comfortable with. Not anybody who can stand up to him and tell him what the truth is. Trump is interested in soothsayers, and he surrounds himself with those kind of people. Get it? The soothsayers, like the kings of old, who just want to hear good things said about them, even when they're driving the country into the mud. And I just break off to say, one of the big problems that people like Trump has, Putin, all of these strong men, so-called, I don't know why they call them strong men, because there are so many areas in which they're men, but not strong. But one very important thing that is lacking and missing in their lives is the absence of an advocate. The absence of somebody who can look you in the face, stand up under withering fire, and tell you the truth. It might not be what you want to hear, but it might be the thing that can save your very life. And I go further than that. Not just political leaders need advocates. All of us, in a way, need somebody like that in our lives, who don't just tell you what you want to hear and how you want to hear it, but can disturb you, shake the foundations of your life, and so that you can recognize that there are things that are going wrong that you need to wake up to and do something about. That has been the downfall of a lot of people. They just get up and they do things because especially if they have a lot of money, they think that they can throw their weight around, think they can just do whatever they want. They can buy anything they want. They can buy favors. They can buy people. And let me tell you something, that kind of person is headed for destruction, personal destruction. So that, in my view, has been the problem that Trump has faced and will face in the next 4 years. because he does not seem to tolerate dissent, and he does not seem to tolerate another voice outside of the one that he wants to hear. Of course, even the soothsayers, they may say things to him, and he doesn't hear those voices because the voice that is speaking to him in his head is counteracting everything else that he's hearing. So he has a right to his cabinet, and we'll see how that plays out. But my feeling, my deep inner feeling, is that he's surrounding himself with loyalists, people who will be willing to do his bidding, and who are zealous in carrying out his wishes. And this is where there's going to be a lot of problems. Because one thing you find out is that when you're zealous about something and you decide, like what they say they're going to do on day one, and I've said in other fora and written in other places about this day one as a day of decision, a day when they're prepared to shake up the foundations of the country, really, in so many different areas, in the civil service, in healthcare, in detaining and deporting people. The amount of things that they plan to do on day one. And the amount of things that he is proposing that they want to accomplish in the 4 years that he's inside there are mind-blowing. There's no way he can even achieve 1/3 of what he's setting out, that he has set out, especially in the detention, the rounding up and detention of people and trying to drive them out of the country without causing tremendous dislocation in the country, chaos and mayhem. If they attack the problems that they say they're going to be doing, Kash Patel, for example, getting through with the FBI director appointment and what he proposes that he's going to do, and how the Justice Department and all those places are going to be weaponized to go after the enemies of the perceived enemies of the president. If that goes through, if what Homer and probably Stephen Miller and all and the members of and Kristi Noem, if she's let through to run the Homeland Division, become Secretary of Homeland, HHS. If she gets through to do what they're proposing, and all this detention and all that sort of thing, you're going to have nothing but, well, you're going to have a lot of noise. But I expect nothing less than a lot of chaos and fear, people walking around on eggshells. Already universities are telling students that they must come home to the colleges long before, the president is inaugurated, because they don't know whether they're going to have another Muslim ban. You remember when they had that ban and many students were shut off at the airports even. They couldn't enter the country. So they're telling them, come ahead of, the opening of the university. So you can begin to see the contours of the fear that people will experience. And that is what bothers me very deeply about these cabinet peaks. But most importantly, about the man at the very top who is picking them and who seems not to have any visceral concern for the welfare of the people. Already he's saying that he can't guarantee that prices are going to come down. News, news, news. And one would have thought that many people who are now having more buyer's remorse or buyer's regret are beginning to see that they employ the wrong person. Some many people are beginning to see that now, but they haven't seen anything yet. But I'm not gonna say anything. I don't want to frighten people. If what I see on the horizon, I should paint a picture, your pressure will go through the roof. And that's why sometimes I don't say certain things. Only when it becomes real necessary that it has to be said, that I'll say it. Because, I wear two hats. I wear the hat of a pastor. And as a pastor, I have a care and a compassion and a concern for people. Yes, you tell them the truth and you help them you give them pointers in which they can navigate their way through the maelstrom that may come. That's one thing. But the second thing is that I also wear the hat of a prophet. And by prophet, I don't mean, just prophesying things that's going to happen in the future. Because when you look at prophecy in the Old Testament, really, let me just break off a little quickly, friends. And you look at prophecy in the Old Testament, it is not so much that the prophets foretold events, so much so as they were foretelling of what could happen and will happen if certain trends in the society continued. So it's telling forth in the name of the God that they served what is likely to happen. Like Zedekiah, for example, Jeremiah telling King Zedekiah, that the Babylonians are coming and you'll be captured and taken and placed in captivity. And he didn't want to hear that. So, of course, he brings the soothsayers who tell him nonsense. He's chatting nonsense, locking him away in the dungeons. But has the message changed? Has Nebuchadnezzar decided not to come? When he's now masked on the borders of Jerusalem and ready to come in, they call the prophet again. But the message is the same. And that is the problem. So the prophetic role that I think I, as a minister of God, a minister of religion, part of the responsibility is to be able to interpret events and tell it forth to people so that they can have a sense of what is likely to happen. And I've been doing that in a number of respects. There's one respect in which I want to be able to dig down more deeply in, and one of these evenings I'll talk about that particular thing. And that has to do with the military and its involvement in the detention and deportation of people. In my prophetic mind, I put in no greater than that. You can see certain trends that are likely to happen. Doesn't mean that you're bright or any genius or anything like that. Because history is replete with what has happened when things like this are done. But it will be strange to Americans because they've never been this way before, to see the level of in a free and democratic society. The closest must have been in the Civil War, but that could be understood. You were at war. But in the modern day America, in the last 50 years, to see what could be coming. But like I said, I'll leave it there. But it is very disturbing to me, certain persons and the way, the philosophy, not even so much the person, because he can always put anybody in those things. It is a philosophy that underlines the peaks. That's the problem. What is it that underlines and gives life and drives the kind of people he's picking to be there? That is what is worrying and can cause a lot of problems. But I'm gonna say anything further on that. It's a topic that I'm sure I'll be coming back to. Like I said, I want to say something about the military, the politicization of the military, and the use of the military in the detention and deportation of people. All right, so that was that. It's cabinet picks. Then I want to say something about Christopher Wray's resignation. Trump, while he was on the campaign trail, made certain swipes at the FBI. And he went as far as to say, and even since he won, that Christopher Wray will be toast, meaning my words. And by that, it's intended to mean that he will no longer continue as his FBI director. Now, the FBI directors are appointed for 10 years. And I believe Wray is in his eighth. And they're appointed for 10 years for good reason, so that they can transcend the different administrations. Because the work that the FBI does in investigation of criminal behavior and, working and intelligence gathering throughout the world is a very important asset to the country. You don't put anybody without any sense of temperance in positions like that. And so I believe in the main that Christopher Wray did a very good job. As a matter of fact, he was appointed by Trump himself. He was one of the good picks back in the day, like Mattis and others. But he fell out of favor because, for one, when the Mar-a-Lago document case came up, and he had to send in, agents to literally raid Mar-a-Lago to find the documents, the national security documents that Trump had removed and taken there. He was not happy with that. And he believes that he has been wronged by the FBI. And he's on a kind of vendetta thing. He wants to put his man in place, Kash Patel, who, as I said earlier, in the earlier segment, that it's going to do his bidding, or is expected to, let me put it that way, to do his bidding. So facing a certain sacking, Mr. Wray decided that, I guess he never said it, but I guess in consultation with his family and friends, that he's not going to put the FBI through that kind of harangue, through that kind of what Trump is promising. So so as not to subject it to that kind of thing, he'd rather just step aside. Well, there are people who see some nobility in what he has done. But as far as I am concerned, as far as Mango Tree Dialogues is concerned, it is the wrong decision. And I say it is the wrong decision for this reason. If you think that Trump is going to bully you out of the office, and for the reasons that he has said, you never appease a bully by just kowtowing to him or just bending to his demands. The only sure way you can get a shark to let go of your hand is to punch him on the nose. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Wray should carry out any violence to the president, by no means. But the point is that when he's threatening like that and he has no foundations, no evidence that are strong enough to give any sense that he's right, and he's just coming at you from that point of view of revenge and vengeance, you don't bow to that. You stand up, you stand your ground. And that is why I admire Jerome Powell, because Trump had been saying that he wanted to remove. Jerome Powell is the head of the Federal Reserve, in case it missed you. And Trump had been saying on the campaign stump that, he wants a new Federal Reserve, and so a new chairman. And also because Powell is in this second uh, term. I think he has 2 more years to go of the 2 term, 8 years, I think he got. He said, I'm not going. And it's not a matter of bravery, no friends. Bravery is not just getting up and say, boy, I'm going to be standing up and doing something. No, it is a subscription to a certain number of principles that you consider dear, that you say, no matter what, I'm not going to bend these principles to accommodate something else because I want to save my hide, or I want to save an organization's hide. To even think that you can save an organization's hide from somebody is a kind of arrogance, in my view, too. So I respect Jerome and the position that he took. And I can tell you, if Fauci was there still, I think a man like that would have stood his ground too, and he would not have bowed his knees to the threats and perceived actions, that could come his way when the new president takes over. No, let him fire you. Oh, people say he doesn't want that on his resume, so he wants this on his resume. I hate to say that he's a coward because he has done a very good job, and he has done some really brave things while he was there. Well, yeah, he's still there as director. And I don't want to apply the label of coward or cowardice to him. But there's something perhaps going on that, the public doesn't even know of, and in his own personal space. So I don't want to put any adjectives to describe it. But all I would say is that when a bully wants to drive you in the ground, you stand your ground. He doesn't know how it would play off. Call Trump's bluff. Fire me. And he, being probably the weakling he is, since that is how he's thinking, might just decide not to do it at all. You're not saving the FBI by bowing to that kind of pressure. And that is my few thoughts on that. But I think it's a wrong move. I didn't mention that I was going to say something about Biden's son and his Biden's pardon of his son, but I just quickly want to say, since I'm on this matter with Ray, that the family has been put through the ringer. Let me put it that way. And things have changed. I can be almost certain that if Trump had not won, Biden would not have pardoned Hunter. I may bold to say that if Trump had not won, Biden would not have pardoned Hunter. But things have changed. Trump won. And so there's a change now in his own thinking. In a way, when it happened, you kind of saw it coming, and people were talking to it and said that he should do it. But the only flaw that I find in what he has done is that he had stated before that he would not pardon him. And that is a lesson to people. I think he stood on a strong moral foundation when he said that at that time, because it would look a certain way to the public, curry favoring with because of a family member. You can just see all the headlines. You can just hear all the epithets that would be heard his way if he had said that. So, but I think it was because of deep conviction that he had that he would not pardon him. But again, as I said, things have changed. And one cannot say what is in his heart and his heart. After all, the man has been through all kinds of tragedies with his family. And here is one last son. And with all the hypocrisies that people tend to express about these things, when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, and you see your child, your son, and for the reasons that he was facing legal jeopardy too, because people are hardly convicted on the kind of gun crime thing that they, you know, purport that they found him guilty on, or the tax evasion thing that he had paid back his taxes on. But here's a man who had been through all that. He had been through, coming down to the last when he had power to exonerate him, to give him a new life, a new lease, and to walk away from it and don't do it. I challenge anybody, any father out there, to tell me that you love your son and you find him in such a predicament and you won't pardon him. So I wouldn't tell anybody that I wouldn't do it, but I would be careful about not I'm talking about what I would do, and then when the time comes, you do something else. That was a big flaw. Now, what this has set in train, of course, is that he's going to pardon a lot of people, and he started today. Over 1,500 people are being given a second chance, as he calls it. And there is more to come. You can bet towards the end of his time in office. Because make no mistake about it, when Trump gets in, it's going to be pardon and steroids. He has already threatened to pardon people who, were complicit, as it were, in deaths on Capitol Hill by, being part of that January 6th tumult. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. All right. Now, finally, I want to fly out from America to Syria, landing in Damascus. When I landed in Damascus, I saw people stand there pushing over the statue of Bashar al-Assad. And when it fell, they were using iron and just beating it and, crushing the material of which it was made and stomping upon it. One of the things you don't do in the Middle East, in Middle Eastern culture, is to show your shoes to somebody. So when somebody stomps on you, it's the greatest indignity they can demonstrate against it. No, I didn't go there physically. I went there, I saw it on TV, and I went there in my mind. But who I have dubbed the butcher of Damascus, that is how I term it. You can call it the tyrant of Syria. Bashar Assad has fallen. Of course, you know the history. His daddy, Hafez al-Assad, passed over the presidency to him And it was not intended for him, but for an older son. Bashar is the younger of the sons, but that son died in a car crash, the older son. And so it fell to Bashar to take over a dynasty. They ruled almost for 50 years or more, perhaps, in Syria with an iron fist, denying people their rights, their civil rights, detaining thousands of people, breaking up families, enriching themselves at the expense of the people. It's a shame when they finally chased him out of the country and they went into the palaces. These guys just have a love for palaces. The same thing happened with Saddam. And all the luxury that they lived in, when so many of their people lived in poverty, ill health, and death. And that's why the people are rejoicing that they have finally gotten rid of it. And the world can shout, happy riddance. He's now in Putin's country, in Russia. One tyrant giving solace to another. And so it now becomes the responsibility of the liberating forces under the leadership of Golani, who was himself a ISIS sympathizer until he broke and went into his own direction, asserted some independence, and is beginning to see himself, to demonstrate himself as being open to the many diverse groups that are in the country: Christians, Alawites, Muslims, Shiites, all of these different religious ethnic groups that are there. Well, he would be smart to continue with this line of openness because America still designates him as a terrorist. As a matter of fact, there is now a $10 million bounty on his head, and that can be executed at any time. So I think it is in the best interest of Syria and perhaps even of the United States in terms of its relationship to kind of redesignate, move away from this terrorist designation and redesignate, they recalibrate their thinking in a different direction and to remove this designation so it can free them up to begin to really do the things that they are promising to help the people. You don't want to encumber him with this sword of Damocles, as it were, over his head. Again, in that situation, things have changed. And wise policy must change as the situation demand it. And I think that the situation they're emerging in Syria now demand that kind of lifting, at least in a symbolic way, so that people can know that they can be brought into negotiations and discussions about matters and the policies that can best advance the interests of the Syrian people. That's what I would say about that. But it's a very interesting development down there. It has almost overnight reconfigured the whole geopolitical arrangements in the Middle East. Already Israel, and whatever you may say about Netanyahu and Israel, they have done a very good job in degrading Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hamas, despite what I have described and still describe as their genocidal footprint in Gaza, have not resigned from that at all. But they degraded Hamas, they degraded the military capabilities. That's what I'm talking about now. And the way they went about it is another matter that one can talk about. And then Iran attacked, and they responded and back and forth. And so they systematically degraded the military capacity of Iran to build even their missile systems that they have been using and probably exporting to places like Russia. So all of this has been good. Now they are in Syria, and they're the Golan Heights that they got in the 1967 war, when they pushed back against the Syrians on that part of I think it's the northern or northern end of Israel. I remember in 1999 going to that area when we went on a trip to Israel, one of these tours, and the guide was good enough to take us up there on the Golan Heights, and we saw some of the tanks that were still, and the rotting in the on the ground. And you can see how important that Golan Heights area is as a strategic area for Israel, because we were told that there were times when soldiers up in the Syrian part of it would lob projectiles down into the valley. There's a valley where farmers would be planting their crops and so on. And so what Israel is doing now is to push further the buffer so that they can have a good birth, because one cannot be sure, how the regime is going to go in Syria, and what will be the intentions. And that is why Israel is doing what it's doing now, taking out its military and chemical manufacturing plants to make sure that they don't fall into the hands of rebels that they don't know who they are. And it's, apart from what appears to be an invasion, it is not hard to find some kind of sympathy with that kind of situation, given Israel's situation and how Syria and Iran, through their proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, colluded to destroy Israel. We just have to face things in an objective way. And but in the end, and all I'm saying is that the whole geopolitical thing has changed. And it will be very interesting to see how things are going to emerge now that we have a new American administration going in. 2025. I'm not talking about Project 2025, but that is our part of what is going to be part of the chaos. But 2025 is going to be a very, very interesting year for the world. Not only is it going to be plagued with uncertainty, but we're going to see a coalition of forces, a coming together of forces, a realignment of geopolitical power, certainly in the Middle East, perhaps in parts of Europe, perhaps in the South China Sea area, Southeast Asia. It will be interesting to see. While all of that is happening, we still have to contend with our own personal lives. One is not here to scare anybody, to help you to understand the issues. And I hope that, having talked about it this evening in the way that I've done, and as we'll continue doing, that we will bring a greater sense of what is happening from a very, I would say, probably not objective way, but a very truthful way. Because I have no pony in any race. I have no politician that I'm subscribed to. I have no organization that can push me around, beholden whether religious or secular. So when they hear me talk like I'm doing French, I'm doing it with hopefully with the requisite humility to recognize that you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. But insofar that I can speak to what I believe is happening. And the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. We'll see it later on, that we have spoken truth to power. All right, so let me thank you for joining me in this broadcast. And I would like to wish for you a very good evening. And again, as we are getting into the Christmas season, we are just a week away, as it were, that you do your shopping, do all the lovings and celebrations that this season calls for. And in everything that you do, be safe and walk good. Take care. Good night.